type something in the chat to let me know you guys are alive. I'm coming on to the screen. There we go. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Okay, good. I think then we will kick this off. Let me just get this going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and we'll take it from there. I'll come back and answer any questions. So here we go. We're going to start. That's the share screen. There we go. Okay. So this is called C-Level Mastery, and webinar is about to start now. Once I get this button working. There you go. So if you've got any questions as we go, just type them in the chat. And when I finish the presentation, I will come back and answer those questions. So, in a limited amount of time that we have, let me just move this little thing up here. Take this away. Yeah, and I'm going to move this out the way a wee bit. There we go. So in the limited amount of time that we have together, my goal is to give you something that you can leverage to, and I'm going to move this here, just moving things around a bit, guys. Put this in the bottom here. My goal to leverage is to make a difference in your life and your business. I want you to leave this webinar with the confidence to take action. I want you to be crystal clear on what you have to do to get the results you want. I want to unlock the true potential of what you are capable of. Do this. There we go. But what I need from you, I want you to agree right now that you're doing what you're going to implement, what we talk about today. So this is me doing a presentation to a group of CEOs in Australia. There's approximately 1,500 CEOs. And before the meeting and during the meeting, after the meeting, talking to a lot of CEOs, what I discovered was that there was a kind of common theme. And what they said was speed of implementation and execution are key. So when you learn a new idea that you think you're going to implement into your business, the quicker that you can implement that into your business, the more successful you will be. So first, a little about me. I've owned businesses in multiple different countries: Australia, South Africa, UK, Canada, America, Central America. And some of the businesses that I've owned are call centers, health food business, trading companies, music companies, marketing companies, a property fund, casinos. And in the middle there was one of my early businesses, and that was a publishing company. It was called Network Information is Power. And that's 1995. And that thin, good-looking gentleman there on the left is me. And on the right, at the time, it was my girlfriend, but it's now my wife, who we've been together for the best part of 30 years. I probably made as much money online as offline. So for me, business, it doesn't really matter whether it's on or offline. It's either a good business or it's a bad business. One of the best promotions that we did, and one that I'm particularly proud of, was a promotion that we did 3.9 million in 72 hours. And that's not to boast, it's just a marketing exercise. I've also had multiple people grow their businesses, taking some people from 10,000 to 100,000, 20,000 to 300,000 a month. I have one person who've taken from 20,000 to 1.5 million per month. So it's the same kind of formula for every business. I'm also considered an expert in the field of outsourcing. All my businesses are outsourced, and I've been outsourcing for over 20 years. So here's why today came about. For the last few years, I've been involved with mergers and acquisitions and working with businesses and business owners to help them achieve their goals. I've looked at literally hundreds of different businesses, everything from fashion, publishing, construction, jewelry, energy, health, engineering, manufacturing, you name it. I've probably had a look at those different types of businesses. But one of the problems is when you buy a business and the owner leaves, and that's why they sell the business, usually they want to exit. There's either no one to step into his role, or the person running the business has no real structure in place that you can build on. So you're kind of in a situation where what do? You either employ somebody who's experienced and put them in there, or try and train the second in charge if he's not properly trained. So the idea behind C-level mastery is to create a framework to train the chosen person to be an effective CEO. So that's the point of this whole thing, is to make it a kind of plug and play. If I buy a business, I can give them this course, and this is like a tiny part of a course, and they should have enough information there to run a business. One of the goals of that is you don't want to spend 6 months or a year training somebody. If you've given them the right training that they can refer to, it makes them more effective faster. So when you buy a business or you own a business or run a business, then what you want to do is you want to build it, you scale it, run it, and make it more profitable every year. So who's this for? So it's really, the owner of a business. So this course is designed for the person who owns a business, the person who's in charge of the business, the person who runs a business, and we're going to call them collectively CEO for now. So in today's training, we're going to divide it up into 3 different parts. So the first part in all of these training is the thing or the message or the concept that I'm trying to convey to you. And the second part is something more technical or mechanical as far as running your business goes. And then we can have some question and answers. So a CEO's job, as far as I'm concerned, is really about 3 things: leadership, direction. You've got to give your company direction. Everything that happens in your company is the direction that you give it. Making good decisions and building teams. So in an interview that I watched with Jeff Bezos, this is what he said. It's very interesting. As a senior executive, what do you really get paid to do? As a senior executive, you get paid to make a small number of high quality decisions. Your job is not to make thousands of decisions every day. So he sees his role. He's retired now from that role, but he saw his role as making some big quality decisions. And here we've got a picture of Nikola Tesla. And this is a quote from Nikola. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. To understand the true nature of the universe, one must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And you can apply that to your business. So when you think about it, it doesn't matter whether you run a small business or a big business, you are the energy that drives it. If you're the person in charge, people take the lead from you. If you're the type of person who is, super active and health fanatic, you'll find that your staff kind of fall into that too. If you're the kind of person who is lazy or unmotivated, your staff become lazy and unmotivated. You set the pace for how your company runs. And the only time that you really get forward movement is when there's a lot of energy in your company. So that takes care of the energy part. And then think in terms of frequency. You could be listening to radio stations. You might like to listen to country and Western music. You might like reggae. You might like rap music. Who knows? But your job as the CEO is to get everybody on the same frequency. They've all got to be thinking like you think. And basically, you've got to get everybody swimming in the same direction. Then you have vibration. So every company, particularly the bigger companies, have a kind of pulse. It's a flow of how that business works. People get into a rhythm, and you want to make sure there is as much energy in that rhythm or pulse as humanly possible. Remember that I was trained by a senior casino manager, and he told me that he could walk into a room, a casino, and he could tell you whether that casino was winning or losing just by how it felt. And I never really thought much about it until many years later, and it's very true. Whether it's whether you've got virtual staff or whether you've got physical staff, you're in their presence, each company has a vibration. So this is one of the most important parts. In the old days, people used to think the fastest way between 2 points is between point A and point B. It actually comes from the Roman era, where the Romans built very straight roads without curves because they didn't want to be ambushed. So, and that became a saying, the fastest way between 2 points is point A and point B. But I think there's a faster way. Just take away the line and go straight from A to B. But, and this is where today's training starts to kick in order to get to where you want to go, you need to know where you're going. You're going to have some kind of vision of where you want to take your company and yourself. Here's an example of somebody I did a bit of work with a few years ago. He was a gym owner, so he wanted to grow his business. And his goal was to open 20 gyms in the next 5 years, and then franchise the business, and within 10 years, be ready for an initial public offering or hedge fund. He wanted to put it all together and take it public or sell it to a hedge fund. That was the plan, 10-year plan. So after working with him, and this is, we'll do more training on strategy as we go forward. What is the strategy there? And this is where vision is very important. If you know the end goal, and most people don't, you can be very effective with your strategy. If you're just trying to build more revenue, it's more hard. And here's an example. So instead of going through that whole process that he wanted to do, I worked with them on what they call a roll-up. So roll-ups where you take a lot of different organizations in a particular industry, roll them up into one company, and then you offload it usually to a hedge fund, or you could take it to IPO. So by applying that financial technique as a roll-up, he accomplished his 10-year goal in 18 months. But you can't accomplish that 10-year goal in 18 months if you don't have the vision of where you want to be. That's why vision, when you start with someone, if you're starting with a new CEO, or you're trying to get your organization swimming in the same direction, you've got to tell them where they have to go. That's the vision of the company. And vision can be further broken down to vision, mission, and goal, but we'll kind of focus on vision for today. Most business owners that I meet and see, they're lost. They're trying to do every day, they're just trying to increase revenue, trying to make more sales, but they're actually lost on where they should be. And I think of it like this. Imagine you're in New York and you're busy, you've got a business, you're in New York, and that's all you can see. But one day you make a decision that you want to go to Miami. And you can envision why you want to go to Miami. You want to wear shorts every day, you want to go sailing, surfing, wherever. You've decided that you're going to Miami. Well, the first part is you've got to make a plan how to get there. So you make a kind of, and that would be the mission part actually. The vision is, What does it look like? And the mission is, what do we have to do to get there? And if you think of Google and the GPS, whenever you want directions, you can get very intricate and precise directions from Google. And there's a step-by-step process there to get to where you want to go. And it's the same in business. Well, I think I've got to go back to the start. Let me just click the wrong button there. I'll go back to that slide. Nearly there. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. All right, so there's a common failure point in businesses. They call it no man's land. So just through sheer willpower and determination, you can get most businesses to $100,000. You can do it with yourself, you can do it with a couple of people, but there's a point at which there's a very high failure rate, is when you get between that $500,000 to say $2 million point. And one of the reasons is you can no longer do this yourself. It's kind of, if you can imagine that you've got your arms out and people keep putting logs for you to hold, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and you're almost forced to make a decision to grow because you're going to need different solutions. So the solutions that got you to, say, $1 million is not necessarily the solutions that you need to get to 3 million, 5 million, 10 million and beyond. You need different solutions. And very often at that point, you'll see companies actually take a dip in revenue because you need to buy things and solutions that are actually bigger than what you need. Salesforce might be an example. It's an expensive thing to use, and it's overkill in the beginning, but you might need that later on. Going back to the vision idea, this is a thought being formed. In YouTube, you can go and watch how a thought is formed. When somebody thinks of something and it connects these nerves, you can actually see a thought being formed. What's very interesting about it is science now knows that when you form a thought, your brain doesn't distinguish between a truth and a lie. The thought or the pattern is still there. And one of the things that triggers how successful you can be in your venture and in life is a thing called a reticular activating system. It's at the bottom of the brainstem. So if you've ever thought about when you buy a new car, you don't see many of them. And then when you buy a new car, all of a sudden they seem to be everywhere. And that's the reticular activating system at work. It filters all of the information in your mind and determines what it's going to give to the subconscious mind to think about. If you can program yourself to think on particular things, the reticular activating system will force that information into your subconscious mind. That's why people who are negative tend to get negative things, because the reticular activating system is constantly programming the brain to be negative or to look for whatever that negative thing is. So the science now is pretty clear that if you want to be successful in any walk of life, you should be programming what your brain sees and hears and smells. This is Jensen Button and Lewis Hamilton, and this is an exercise in visualization. You can see this on YouTube too. So they were both given the steering wheels of their Formula One cars, and they had to imagine driving around the lap. Both of them knew the course so well that they could replicate exactly how they would drive that lap, even without the cars. And when they compared how fast they were compared to the car, it was within seconds. It was incredible. And you can also see the difference between both of these world-class drivers was fractional. That's how much they could envision. We take Conor McGrae, a well-known athlete now, and he's the highest paid UFC fighter in history. And if you look at any of his early videos, he had a very clear vision of where he wanted to get to. He was on a mission to get to his vision, and he accomplished that. This, I think, is an incredible story with Mike Tyson and Gus D'Amato, his trainer. His trainer hired a hypnotist to hypnotize Mike Tyson from the age of 13 to plant in his head a vision of what being the world champion would look like and what he would have to be to get there. And he became so programmed, the rest is history. So whether you know it or not, your life and business right now is a result of the vision in your head. Think of a vision as program in your mind. So let me show you how powerful a vision can be with the right actions. Around 2006, I started applying this formula to my life. So every day, my wife and I would sit down and we had a book and we pasted in the things that we were trying to achieve. We put down the countries we wanted to go to, the lifestyle we had, the best house that we could think of, our holiday homes, what we wanted in our homes. And a few years later, I bought that house. So I used to sit, lived in a gated community in a golf course, but we had the smallest house in that community. And I could see the biggest house from my couch. Whenever I took a break, this is what I could see. It's 6 different levels, actually. And I used to wonder, what does a guy have to do to be able to afford a house like this? A few years later, I owned a house. We had 2 full-time staff just to look after the house. It was all designed with, we had the architects come in, we had designers come in, we had it beautifully decorated. My wife even had a room dedicated just to her shoes. We had walls covered in Swarovski crystals. We had a wine cellar, and I had this 8-foot eagle custom built. And people used to drive past the house just to take a picture of the eagle. So what's your vision? You see, as the CEO, it's not just about the vision for your company, it's about the vision for you. It's not going to work if you just have this great vision for your company, but your personal life's a mess. So the first part of the equation is to clearly define what you want for yourself and company. And you can divide vision into 3 different parts. You've got to imagine it, you've got to write it down, and you've got to reduce it to a vision statement. So what will the vision do for you? It will dictate your values. It will clarify your purpose. It will give you direction. It will help you choose your partners. It will take away the stress. It will focus you. It will determine how you spend your time and decide where your energy will go. You can only ever become as big as your vision. It's almost impossible to exceed it. So make it big. It's your destiny. Working on your vision is one of the most powerful exercises you can do as a business owner and CEO. So thinking of this vision idea, if it's for your personal vision, then you should actually don't go near your computers, go away, get a notepad and write down all of the ideas you can or imagine about what you would like for your vision. If you're going to do it for the company, you have to do it with the rest of the team. Whoever your team is has to build that vision with you. For the team, it should not be just your vision. And the step number 2, write down all of the ideas, all of the things that come to mind that you would want. If it's for the company, for example, what does your building look like? What does it look like when you walk in? Who's the receptionist? What is the pulse of the company? Everything you would like that to look like. Then reduce it down to a statement, something that the team, particularly your leadership team, knows and understands. I was for 3 years, I was part of a group called the Executive Connection. I think it's called Vistage in the States. There was 1,500 CEOs across Australia, and we were divided into groups of 15. So you would have a very senior person once a month who would lead a group of 15 other CEOs. And the idea of that group was to help one another, help improve our business. And one of the exercises that we were asked to do was to create a vision board of what we wanted for our personal life. And one of the people in our group went one step farther. He created this vision board that went all around his kitchen. Interestingly enough, he was the first person to achieve his goals. His entire family was behind him and knew exactly what they were trying to do. So here's some thoughts on vision. 10x your vision. Whatever idea, particularly monetary, that you have, 10x it. If your idea is that you want to try and get to $1 million a year, make it $10 million. If you're at 10 million and you want to get to 12 million, 14 million, make it 100 million. Your brain doesn't know the difference. But if you tell it you want to get to 12 million, it's going to try and get you to 12 million. If you say 100 million, it's going to try and get you to 100 million. So make your vision big. Don't worry about the mechanics. A lot of people don't like to dream big because they start thinking of all of the reasons things won't work. Don't worry about the mechanics. Make your vision big and bold. Mechanics will follow. Everything an acorn needs to be a mighty oak tree is hardwired into it. Everything you will ever need is already in you. All you have to do is unleash it. Stay away from people who are not on the same page, people who are negative, people who are continuously trying to criticize you. Anything that will slow you down getting towards your vision, separate yourself from them. Be deliberate about how you spend your time. Even, there was a great general who once said, even a retreat must be planned. Even free time must be planned. As a business owner, you will be days where you get exhausted or your body and brain just refuses to do anything else and you're kind of forced to take a break. By that time that happens, it's already too late. But you should plan rest and give yourself permission for rest. Be deliberate about how you spend your time, whether it's work or rest. This year will not be different because you want it to be. You have to change it. You can only be effective if you know where you're going. That's why you need a vision. Don't overthink this. Just follow the plan. If you overthink this, doubt will creep in. Learn to say no. If someone or something is interfering with your vision, just say no. The reason I'm smiling is I was speaking to somebody who only says no. If your desire to achieve your vision exceeds your fear, you will overcome your fears. So that's the part of today's webinar. The concept that I want to get through to you is that, in this road to becoming successful, you have to start with vision. There's lots of other things that we'll get into, but that you got to start with vision. So now we're going to move into something a bit more mechanical about business. So some stats or statistics you should look at daily, others weekly, and still others monthly. All my companies are process-based. So when I speak to my CEO, one of the conversations that I have are, show me the team dashboard. I want to see who's overdue, who's done on time. And if somebody has a lot of overdue tasks, I want to dig deeper to find out why that is. I think of a company like a person, and just like a person, it needs a dashboard I can look at. So that will tell me how the company is doing. And one of the basic, financial tools that you can use is financial ratios. So part of what we're going to discuss in the next few weeks is, or trying to communicate, is financial literacy. So one of the most important ratio is when your total assets are less than your total liabilities, or liquidity and solvency, where you are unable to pay your debts when they fall due, you're basically insolvent. Now, when a company becomes insolvent, there's a lot of ramifications. They can be quite, severe. They can be both criminal and civil. if you continue to trade insolvent. So you've got to kind of know where you are most of the time. And that brings to ratios. So one of the most important ratios is the current ratio is used to determine whether or not a corporation has sufficient current assets to satisfy its current liabilities, debts that are due within the next year. The ratio is the figure that shows the number of times that current assets can pay off current obligation. It's expressed as a number. So basically that is how much do you have against how much do you owe. If you have twice as much as you owe, the ratio would be 2. Asset ratio. A company is very similar to the asset ratio. It was slightly different because it's more focused on cash and cash equivalents. So a company's immediate capacity to meet its current liabilities with its most liquid assets is measured using the quick asset ratio. For example, cash, cash equivalents, marketable securities, accounts receivable. And although it is incomparable to the current ratio, it does not take into account prepaid costs or inventory because that might take several weeks or months for these items to be converted to cash. I look at my quick asset ratio every day, particularly for online businesses, because they move so fast. I think in terms of months. So for example, in this example of 1.5, that would mean that you could last, if you're thinking in terms of month, 1.5 months before you run out of cash. If somebody switched the lights out, if money stopped coming in, how long could you last? And the quick asset ratio tells you that. Now, the other ratios I'm not going to cover, but I'll show you quickly. We've got things like cash ratio, inventory turnover ratio, receivables turnover ratio, payable turnover ratio, asset turnover ratio, profit margin, return on assets, return on equity, and debt ratio, debt to equity ratio, interest coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio, price to earnings ratio, price to sales ratio, price to book ratio, price earnings to growth ratio, dividend yields, dividend payout ratio. And for bigger companies, it's quite common for them to have a dashboard made up just of ratios so that the CEO can have a look probably weekly or monthly at how they're performing or where the danger points are. So I've kind of taken some of the bits that I like and created this. So here, for example, this is a company that I have. And it looks like this. I look at this every day to give me a kind of overview of where we're at. And I'll break that down a little bit for you. So the top line is we've got just under 1.5 million in cash in that company. And if I took into consideration how much we would have to pay out every month to cover our overheads, we could survive in that company for over 37 months without earning any money. And that takes us well beyond, the assets and liability ratio. I look at projected budgets. I look at where we're at in the month and where we are annually. I like to look at the previous year to see how sales were. I like to look at the cumulative sales for the year as it is, and the monthly sales. I like to look at the net income. I like to look at the different products and how they're performing and what the averages are over 3 years and the products by themselves. And then a kind of overview of where we're at. So this particular company has been going for a while, and I like to see the history and try and figure out where we were, why things dipped or why they increased. So I like to see previous year, month on month. So you've got the current year, the difference between the current year and the last year, expenses, and then the net income. That's it, guys. If anybody wants to reach out and would like to talk about the business, you can reach me at markmcrae.com. And I'm going to go back to the questions, let me take this. I'm going to stop sharing. And does anybody have any questions? David, you got any questions? Jay? Adam? That goody. I'm not sure whether this can actually see or type. I'm not sure. All right, well, how often should we write down our vision? Well, that's a good question. If it's for your personal vision, then every day. So the more you can program your brain, the more likely you are to achieve it. Just like your brain starts to pick up when you buy a new car, you see other cars of that brand. When you're telling your brain, this is what I'm looking for, your brain starts to find ways, starts to look for things you don't even see. So for example, you may be sitting in a house and you can hear a crying baby 2 or 3 houses away. Your brain just automatically picks it up, or a dog barking. That's where the reticular activating system filters that out because it decides it's not, it's not important to you. But for a personal vision, every day you should write it down. And for a company, you should revisit it. Every time we have a meeting, I like to have it read so that somebody in the meeting reads the vision and the mission and the goals. Okay, thank you, David. Since there's no more questions, I will wrap it up there. And to Russ, who's been my technical assistant and Missouri today, thank you for your help, and thank you for attending the webinar. I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.